How's it going, everybody? So today is day 2 of trying to figure out what kinds of gifts would be well suited for your friends and family that you can make in your shop with limited tools. Now, one of the hardest gifts to figure out every year is what to give a house full of kids. And this year, I figured it out. I have the answer. Now, one of the really cool things about this design is if you change up the dimensions a little bit, this table can be used for a lot of different things. And so basically, I'm going to be giving it to them as a puzzle table. But if you made it a little bit bigger, a little bit wider, this could easily be used for something like board games, tabletop games, or even something like D&D. Now, I went out this morning and I picked up 10 of these 1x2 by 4 foot long yellow pine boards. Now, that's gonna be all the pieces I'm gonna need for my framing. And I also picked up this 4x8 sheet of melamine. The cool thing about melamine is it also doubles as a dry erase board. I don't know if I'm gonna go that direction with it, but it's definitely an opportunity for anybody who wants to make one of these. Now here you have a really big opportunity for customization. If you go down to one of the big box stores, you can find these wall panels in a million different varieties, and you can really customize this project to what you want it to be. You could make it brick, you could make it stone, you could make it just any number of things. I highly recommend just taking a walk through one of those aisles. You will get a million ideas of how you can make this look with those wall panels. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to be cutting down all of my framing materials so that I know exactly what size I'm working with, and that's before I can start on the inside framing to kind of pull everything together. Now because I'm doing 45-degree angle miters, this is gonna be really easy. I just have to cut 4 pieces at 26 inch and 4 pieces at 32 inch, and then I can start gluing those together. And I also have one last idea that I'm gonna show you at the end of the video that will truly customize this to the environment that you're bringing into. All right, I've been trying to rack my brain on how to explain exactly what it is I'm doing here, and I don't know how to. So basically what I'm gonna tell you is I'm building some sort of a torsion box on the inside of this cabinet. However, this piece that I'm cutting out right now is actually gonna be part of a drawer. And I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but on the next step, I'm gonna be able to explain exactly what it is I'm doing here. Okay, so I've given you a bit of an exploded view of what I'm doing here. This is going to be the top, and it's all going to be miters, so all of the visible joints are going to be miters. I have slot joinery here in this cross piece and here in this cross piece, and that's going to give me all of my rigidity for the piece. And then I have some extra gaps here so that these drawers, these false fronts, are going to slide right in, and then all of the drawers themselves are just going to be straight butt joinery so that this can just be all glued together, and you're never gonna see any of these slots right here. So hopefully that all makes sense. Now the hard part about this is figuring out how to inset this piece of melamine into the bottom of the drawers. There's a couple of different ways of doing this, one with a router, one with a table saw, and I'm gonna show you the method that you can do this with hand tools so that anyone can accomplish this task. The problem is that if you put the melamine directly on the bottom of this, you won't have the space anymore to add melamine to this top panel. So cutting a groove by hand really isn't that difficult, and since this is going to be in the bottom of a drawer, it doesn't have to be perfect. Now, since this is going to be a 90-degree cut, I'm basically just cutting out a square of material. So all I do is I mark out on both sides of the piece where I'm going to cut. I start out by scoring a long line in both of the orientations, so that way if the wood does break, it'll have a tendency to break along the score line. Then once I get that square of material off of there, I can clean it up a little bit with a chisel, and then I go and find one of these sanding blocks, and then at this point I can just keep sanding the groove until it's perfect. So I'm basically putting a false front on this drawer. It's not much different than a normal drawer. If you're going to be constructing drawers like this, it's a very good idea to make sure your runners on the left and the right sides of the drawer are the full length of the drawer. Otherwise, you run the risk of the drawer falling apart or hanging up on something inside the drawer cavity. Since I'm not putting any complicated stains on this project, the easiest way to fix imperfections in the joinery is to put glue in the seam and pack it full of sawdust and then sand over the top and then add more glue and then sand again, and you just keep doing that until the seam is perfect. If you are planning on putting any kind of stain on, you just have to make sure that all of the glue is sanded completely off of the surface. Some of the glue will hide inside the grain of the wood, so you have to be very thorough. When you're cutting the panels to go between your layers, it's a very good idea to make sure that they are cut oversized. I ended up running into some major issues because I skipped that and decided to cut them to the final size I needed. Please don't screw this up because I ended up creating several hours more of work for myself than I needed to. Now, it occurs to me that I could easily run this thing over on my table saw and cut this out in a matter of a couple of minutes. Or I could even use a circular saw and cut this down. But I have made a commitment that I am going to show you that this project, as well as all of my other projects, can be done with limited tools. It doesn't matter what tools you have, you can get these projects done. So if you appreciate all this extra work I'm going through, please hit the like button because I'm about to saw for the next 10 minutes just to prove a point to people that probably don't even watch this channel. I think the people who complain about this stuff honestly don't watch my channel anymore. I think they left. They complained and then they left. And the good people who still watch this channel, you guys, I probably already understand this by this point, but I'm still gonna go through an extra 10 minutes of sawing just to prove a point. So if you think this is worth it, please hit the like button for me. It helps out the channel a ton. I am going to saw for the next 10 minutes. One of the interesting things about melamine is normal wood glue won't stick to it, but I was reading online that Titebond polyurethane glue will stick to melamine, so I decided to give that a test. I am a firm believer in always trying new things and not just always taking the easy way out. I haven't done a lot of work with melamine in the past, so I really wasn't sure how this would turn out. I decided to treat it just like any wood glue, and I put a small amount on the piece and then I used a paintbrush to smooth out all of the glue, and I was trying to keep it away from the edges. After I had all of the pieces together, I still ended up with a bit of squeeze out, and I did everything I could to take care of all of the glue, and especially take all of the glue out of the cracks. Once all of the clamps and tape were off, I could start the sanding process, and this is where I noticed the major error. Okay. So we're looking at the front drawer section here, and I have made two really dumb mistakes that have all compounded right here into this front area. This is where my two drawers go. This is supposed to be a nice clean flush surface. Now what I was supposed to do when I was cutting the melamine was to cut the melamine wider than my framing here. And somehow when I glued this down, I think everything got pushed that way. And so the sides and the back actually did end up looking nice and clean and flush, and I'm gonna finish sanding that later to make it look even cleaner than it is. And that I can do that. On the front here, all of these melamine pieces got shoved that way, which means this part here is cut underneath my framing. Now, fortunately, my drawer will cover that up. That's not that big of a deal, except I have to figure out what to do with this gross glue drip here. And that brings me to my other mistake that I made, which was I somehow either missed a clamp here or didn't clamp it well enough. I'm not 100% sure what I did there because this piece is not attached. And because it's a polyethylene glue, it expanded, which I didn't know polyethylene glues apparently expand, so watch out for that. And that expanded and dripped down, and now this can't even be glued back together without first chiseling it out. So I'm gonna have to chisel that out and then re-glue that, which I'm not excited about. And because that happened, the drawer doesn't line up at all anymore. Now, like I said, because this is an expanding glue and I cut all of my melamine too small to fit this section, I also ended up with expanding glue here on the front. And I think that's the biggest issue because when you do put the drawers in, you have this really ugly glue line on the front when that was supposed to be just basically the edge of the melamine. And it would have looked fine as the melamine, but because I didn't get it right, I end up with this really gross glue spot right here. So what I'm gonna be doing now is I'm going to be cutting this out, re-gluing it. I'm gonna cut the front face of this out, probably with a table saw, and I'm gonna replace it with a piece of melamine. And then I'm gonna sand down all my drawers, and then I can actually start the finishing process. But all of this could have been avoided if I had just cut my melamine about 1 inch wider in all orientations than I actually needed it. That would have solved this problem, so. Finally, now that all of those repairs are out of the way, I could go back to my sanding process. I started out with a 60 grit so I could flush up all of the sides, then I could switch over to a 120, and then go over the entire project with that. Then I could switch over to a 220 grit sandpaper and go over the entire project with that as well, and then also use that to round over all of the corners. Now, because I had so many issues with the wood glue, I decided to stay miles away from any stain, and I just put on a quick coat of polyurethane. This is one of those projects where I know the piece is going to be abused over time, so I'm really not too worried about making this finish perfect. You have to keep in mind that anytime you're giving a wood project to a kid, or in this case, a ton of kids, that it isn't going to last forever, and that's okay. In the spirit of trying something new, I was trying to figure out different ways of tying this entire project together for all of the kids. And one of the ways I decided to do this was to put stickers on the project. All of the kids have different personalities and different interests, but I was able to find these vinyl wall stickers that they would all enjoy. Dinosaurs and sea life sort of covers all of them. Anytime you're doing a project for kids, always think about adding stickers as your X factor. There are a ton of these wall stickers on Amazon, so I'll put a link in the description to a few that I think looked really cool. It's a really easy way of bringing the X factor out in any project. I am so happy this project is finally done. One of the things I've said so many times before on this channel is that woodworking and making in general teaches you perseverance and determination. I ran into so many annoying issues on this project, especially because I was trying to make it a limited tools project, but I knew that if I just kept moving forward, eventually I would get the project done. In the end, I was able to make this project look really nice, and I know the kids are going to get a lot of enjoyment out of it. Even though I had to go through a little bit of extra headache in this project, I really liked that I was able to learn something new and get some experience out of it. And now I know I never want to try that stupid glue again. But I also learned that I need to give myself a little bit of extra room for error in my projects. Lessons learned. Well, anyway, thanks for letting me ramble. Catch y'all next time. Go make something.